One day, I was playing Kirara Fantasia, a mobile RPG that incorporates characters from different Manga Time Kirara series and puts them into a fantasy world filled with the limits of turn-based combat. I could bullshit and tell you that I'm a big Manga Time Kirara fan, but really, I only played the game for one reason. Anyways, as I was wasting my life away instead of wasting my life a different way, a thought occurred to me. Where's my Kyoto animation game? And with that, the thought never left my head as I moved through the next days. Constantly, I was thinking about a game where a bunch of aliens, time travelers, espers, tea alcoholics, dragon women got together and did something depending on the genre. In all honesty, the idea alone is very far-fetched considering the studio has a wide variety of characters in different genres, wider than one would think, and yeah, there's no way something like this will ever happen. But I love this studio so much that I didn't care how ridiculous it sounded, and because my brain is full of burgers, I finally decided to get a little creative about it. When it came to what genre of game I thought would fit, I really do think an RPG would be the most fitting for this kind of crossover. I imagine having the slice of life structure of something like Golf Story, considering a lot of KyoAni shows are slice of life, while having the more mystical elements of literally any other RPG I can think of. I mean, we need some sort of excuse to get these characters together, and I don't believe the Lucky Star Girls exist in the same universe as the literal fucking dragons. However, I honestly wouldn't know how to make anything out of an RPG concept, so I went with a fighting game akin to Smash and just decided to simply make a roster in Photoshop. I kinda hated going with the most obvious and simple idea, but I'm really not as skilled as one might think, and if I were to go full on with all these ideas in my head, I don't think I get a single minute of sleep. And I actually want to graduate senior year of high school. Anyways, with all that self-hindrance in mind, I got started anyway. The first thing I decided to do was jot down all the characters I could think of for the roster in a notebook designed for school. You'd think that wouldn't be too difficult since I have about 20 series to work with, and to that I say, yes, it wasn't that difficult. In fact, the problem really came from how many characters I should include from each series. Using this template, I only had 75 slots to work with, so I had to be both smart and quite lazy when it came to character inclusion. I also wondered how I should organize the roster on the template with the thought of doing it in chronological series order and afterwards make up my own order for when each fighter got into the series. You know, assuming this shit has more than one game. Once again though, I didn't have the time and energy for that, so I had to restrain myself. As an imperfect perfectionist, all this holding back haunted my mind, but I knew it was what I had to do. Once I wrote the first draft of the roster, it was finally time to dive into Photoshop. I got started with editing the characters in each slot, starting with the ones from KyoAni's sort of sequel spin-off to Full Metal Panic. One of the most difficult parts of doing this was the fact that I haven't seen half of KyoAni's shows despite calling myself a huge fan of the studio. So when it came to character choices, there was a bit of doubt sometimes because of the thought that someone with more knowledge of the studio's work should be doing this rather than me. But then I remembered this was simply just for the fun of it, and I wanted to put out a video, so fuck it. Also, I want to mention I didn't start recording my process till a little later, so enjoy me struggling to figure out what footage to use for a minute or two. With Full Metal, I included the two main characters and the commanding officer of Mithril. Considering I know literally nothing about some of these series, I had to keep the capacity of some of them short at times. Afterwards, I included 4 of the main girls from Air, and this wasn't fun since my friend Lee, who's in a call with me, realized the PNGs I used were from the light novel game and not the anime. I tried to find some from the anime, but absolutely nothing showed up. I didn't want to have a consistent theme of using the magnetic lasso tool to cut out characters from images, because that would take way too long, and I didn't want things to get to a point where my fun was ruined from repetition. Thankfully, however, I finally got to a series I was fully familiar with. When it came to the melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, I felt like I needed to include every main character into the roster, cause it'd be a crime if I didn't. If the entire SOS brigade isn't in the game, then none of them will be at all. I'm totally not saying this because Haruhi's holding guns to my head. I hate to say that one of Haruhi's alternate skins would probably be the bunny outfit she wore in the series sometimes, and I forgot exactly why she did.
We're gonna pass out flyers wearing these. Think we'll get some attention now or what?
And with that, I regret regaining knowledge. Shouldn't be too surprised though, considering this is the same girl who has photographic evidence of blatant sexual harassment. I actually think it'd be cool if one of Nagato's alts was her design in the disappearance of Nagato Yuki spinoff, which I see absolutely no one talk about. Hell, honestly, everyone could have that skin now that I think about it. Mikuru's alternate skin would definitely be the maid outfit she wore a lot in the show, because of Haruhi. If I were to describe how insane Haruhi is in detail, we'd be here until the sun finally hit our planet. But even by then, we'd all be someone's ancestor. Next up was canon, and I only included 3 of the main cast because once again, this was a series I've never seen. The terrible feeling of being biased started coming back until thank goodness we're at Lucky Star now. I included every main character once again because why wouldn't I? And the PNG I was going to use for Miyuki didn't sit right with me at the time. I want at least some of the characters to have more dynamic poses than just standing there, so I tried to find another one. To which I did, and the way it's colored looks so out of place with the rest of them. After some color correction though, things were looking a little more consistent. I did all of this for my least favorite Lucky Star main. This process reminded me that a lot of the characters were gonna look a little inconsistent next to each other in terms of the PNGs I use, but I was already accepting many limitations. What's not one? As a bonus, and for small bits of variety's sake, I included the main teacher, Miss Kudoi. I'd be lying if I said my reasoning for her specifically wasn't simply because, like Konata here, she is a gamer. Konata's ult would without a doubt be Haruhi's school outfit. To all the other Lucky Star fans out there, I think we can agree that if this was an RPG or a story mode akin to Subspace Emissary, a scene of Konata meeting Haruhi would be the dumbest yet best thing to ever happen. Clannad was next, which is a fan favorite by many, and I haven't seen it! It is a series I plan on watching at some point though. Of course I included the main character and the main girl since they are essential. I put the two twin sisters in the roster as well, and one could say they could be Echo Fighters to Kagami and Tsukasa, cause like, come on. Plus the secondary character from the series once again for a little variety. But who the hell cares? Just like with Haruhi and Lucky Star, if all the main cats weren't in the roster, it'd be committing a crime for me. If I were to not have Ritsu, but instead put June, yeah, that'd be unique, but it'd be so wrong, and I wouldn't forgive myself for picking freaking June instead of Bucho. This is the same girl who took a bite out of every donut in the box. She doesn't deserve a spot. Once again, I had to deal with the fact that Yui looked extremely out of place color palette wise next to the others, and no matter how much I tried to fix it through color correcting and all that jazz, I couldn't exactly get her to match the rest. Plus, I really like this render for her, so it wasn't going anywhere. One funny thing that happened involved me wanting to put Yui's sister Ui with the rest of the main KyoAni characters. Ui is always considered to me the most tragic KyoAni character in the series, always having to take care of the house while her parents fuck off because her older sister is too stupid to do so, and is always putting her sisters and everyone else's needs over herself. I thought it was finally time for her to get out of that kitchen and show everyone what she's truly made of. Instead of fighting to keep the family house from blowing up, she can instead fight alongside and against others for the fun of it. Because fun things are fun. However, as soon as I edited Ui into the roster template, I realized something. I somehow forgot to edit Azusa. So I had to go back and put Azusa in that slot, but that meant Azusa took up the last slot in the row. The way I was doing this was having the entirety of a series in one section and not having them continue to the next, because I like to organize. Unlike Smash 4. So unfortunately, because Azusa was too important, I had to drop Ui from the roster. Oh well, we tried. Go back to the kitchen where you belong, you peasant. I'd also like to say all of their alts would without a doubt be the outfit they wore throughout the EDs of the series. Which would be sick because those outfits are aesthetic as hell! As a Yui main, her Don't Stay Lazy outfit would be the one I'd usually go with. Side note, Mugi would without a doubt be the most overpowered character in this fucking game.
Let me give it a try.
I've talked about the KyoAni section for way too long, so let's move on. Nichijou, which I planned to watch at some point, was as simple as adding 3 of the main characters in. And yes, I know someone would probably tell me that not including every Nichijou main would be a crime similar to Haruhi, Lucky Star, and KyoAni. And yes, you are probably correct, but as we've seen throughout the video, bias and self-limitation is a huge negative factor in this. Not gonna lie, I felt some sort of resentment editing Nano in because of the fact that she beat Yui in Twitter user Sharp Haruka's Best KyoAni Girl contest, which I'm still salty about! When editing the Hyoka characters, I might have accidentally made a visual representation of the two main characters' dynamic, at least from what extremely little I've seen of the show. Another KyoAni series I do plan to watch at one point or another. Considering Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions is a romance, I simply put the two main characters best represented. Then I reached Tamako Market, which I consider an underrated series from the studio. Obviously, I included Tamako herself and Mochizo as well. Mochizo, despite being the main guy character in Tamako, honestly didn't have a major role in the series, but was without a doubt an essential part of the Tamako love story movie. Looking at the name in the poster, you can figure out why. Lastly, for a little more variety, I included Data, the very conceited and honestly annoying bird that could project stuff from his eyes for some reason. I originally wanted to include Kana because she is without a doubt best Tamako Market girl. But once again, I couldn't because of space limitations, so sorry, Kana. So considering I knew very little about Free at the time, because of unfamiliarity and capacity stuff, the only Free rep ended up being the main protagonist himself, Haru. Although by the time of writing the script, I just started watching Free, and I will say that if I watched it while making the roster, I definitely would have replaced Haru with Nagisa. Cause honestly, from what I've seen of the first season, he's the best character. Also, if anyone's wondering what I think of the first season so far, it's not bad. After editing 2 shows I haven't seen with 2 of the main characters from each being included, it was time for the big one. When going into this shit show, I knew from the very beginning I wanted a Fire Emblem equivalent to the roster. You know, a series that has way too many characters put into the crossover for whatever reason. My two shows of choice to represent this were either Sound Euphonium or Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. I don't know the reasoning behind the Fire Emblem thing, but my reasoning for these two were simply because they're probably the most talked about and well-known KyoAni shows right now. And I just think either of these two being the equivalent would be kind of funny. In the end, I decided to go with Sound Euphonium, really only because I much prefer Sound Euphonium over Miss Kobayashi.
You are biased. I win, bye-bye.
You got the essentials, Kumiko and Reina, also known as the definition of Yuri bait, alongside Natsuki, Sapphire, and Asuka. I even included the president of the band herself, Haruka, and as well as Kumiko's childhood friend, Shuichi. I originally wanted the music teacher as the last character, but for reasons I forgot about, he didn't make it, so instead I got this guy, who I forgot the name of.
Wait, no, seriously, what's your actual name?
Next up was Myriad Colors Phantom World, which again I never heard of up until now, and for this I put in 5 characters! Why? No, really, why did I put that many? I honestly forgot. Though I think I recall having a bit of variety when it came to the character selection of the series, but that's for the people who have watched it to judge. With Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, I wanted to have more characters than the amount I ended up with, but I ultimately had to shorten the line due to running out of space. I left Kobayashi herself out considering to me she felt out of place with the rest of the literal dragons. I have the essentials like Todo and Kana. Out of the other side characters, I chose Elma since she has somewhat of an actual character unlike this bitch, and isn't creepy and unlikable like Crazy Eyes over here. With the last slot of the series, I got a little out there and put Toru's father, who as far as I know only appeared in the season 1 finale, and I have not seen season 2, so I don't know if he made an appearance there too. There is a lack of villains in this roster, obviously because not a lot of KyoAni anime have a villain. Finally, with the most recent 2 shows, I really did nothing interesting here at all. One from each series. Violet Evergarden from the show Violet Evergarden, and this guy from Archery anime. With that underwhelming finish, the main roster was pretty much complete. I knew from the very beginning though that I wanted DLC characters to come up with for the remaining slots. Some of them can still be from KyoAni, while others I actually wanted to incorporate from other anime outside of the studio. Also, going back to the villains thing I talked about, I originally wanted to include Asakura as a Haruhi rep for the DLC, but she didn't make it in simply because I forgot to edit her into the roster template. This could only mean that I'm probably going to make my 2-hour trip to school only for her to show up and try to kill me. Whatever, at least we'll end it off on a decent year. To start off the DLC characters, we have Ishida from A Silent Voice, an amazing movie, and going into the DLC stuff, I knew A Silent Voice had to be represented. Next, I decided to bring in Akko from Little Witch Academia, as, I don't know, for some reason I feel like she fits in decently with the rest of the KyoAni cast. Plus, I like Little Witch Academia, so why not? As another random KyoAni rep, I decided on Mafu, who is the mascot of Amagi Brilliant Park, I guess. Sort of a Deta equivalent of not being a disgusting human. While we're on the topic of non-humans, I wanted to insert K-on's most amazing club pet, Tan-chan, because he is adorable. However, Tan-chan decided to be the most difficult bitch I've ever had to put up with since there were no PNGs of him, and this image was the best I could find. And I could not even begin to tell you how long it took to erase the background since I tried my best to get rid of even the little specks of it on the lines and edges and such. Next, I decided on Usagi, also known as Sailor Moon from the hit series Sailor Moon. Why Sailor Moon? Hell if I know, I haven't even seen Sailor Moon yet. By this point, however, I had a realization that this was my chance. A chance to form an apology to a certain someone. Since I ended up having more than enough space, that meant everyone's favorite generous individual makes a return. Now you can get out of the kitchen and focus more on your wants and needs. Lee suggests I put in Sunohara from Clannad in the next slot. In my head, I questioned the random choice, but because he's my friend, I added the character anyway. After a minute of thinking, I decided to have a rep from a very recent series, Komi Can't Communicate. I was originally going to pick Komi herself, but Lee suggested Najimi instead, which I actually thought was a much better choice. Because Najimi is great, come on. Last but certainly not least, with the final slot, Lee suggested Shiraichi from the Lucky Channel segments in Lucky Star. But then I thought to myself, this roster could use some bipolar.
Huh?
To which I decided on his co-host Kogami, which is a perfect way to end things off. I need to mention this duo and Lucky Channel in general is probably the best thing I've ever seen.
Okay, cut it!
Let me finish saying, damn it!
It's only a mic check! Besides, we're out of time!
Who cares?
I can't hear you!
Your freaking ass, you split.
After all of that, I could say that the roster was finally complete. Then I randomly decided to replace Sailor Moon with Sailor Mars just to be more random, and with that, the roster was finally complete. For real this time. Even though the roster was complete, I did go back to do a few things. Resizing the characters was definitely very necessary, as a lot of them needed to simply be bigger, some more than others. I also decided to do something with the player 1 slot, and of course edited in the only one that really matters in this whole roster. Even included her name and the after school tea time logo as well. I was actually going to put each of the characters' names on the bottom of their slots, but I realized that would take more time than it needed to, and honestly at this point I just wanted to be done already. I might do this and also make a Smash inclusion order to the template like Smash Ultimate at some point later on, which I'll probably post on my Twitter, I guess. This altogether though was a lot of fun to do, despite the whole idea being really ludicrous and basic at the same time. If it were up to me though, a Kyoto animation game would be an RPG of some sort, and I'd like to see someone do something with that idea. I wholeheartedly know someone with more knowledge on the studio's history and characters most likely would have made a better roster than this, and someone probably has, but either way, I had fun, and that's all that matters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Whenever that is.
We're out of time!